Good morning. Let's talk about fellowship again. How about that? Yeah. Thank you. Was that Bob? Oh, thank you. Thank you, Donnie. Yeah, actually, more specifically, let's spend some time talking about words. Yeah, let's talk about words. Speech, conversation. Been on TikTok? You see all the canon events going around lately? You don't know what I'm talking about? Canon event is just a moment in your life that really was an interchange, really shaped who you became. And like, come on, Batman, right? Batman had a canon event. When he was a kid, he watched his parents be killed. That was his canon event. And then, that forever shaped who he would one day become, this vigilante out there pursuing justice and shining beams of light into the sky. That was his canon event. And if you watch enough movies, you might start to think that most of our lives are shaped by these massive canon events. But the truth is, most of our lives are shaped by something I would call canon conversations. That's what I want to talk about. Things that were said to you during your life. Things that may have been passed to you. Ideas, attitudes, exposure to things. Hey, have you ever tried ... That could be a moment that's a canon moment for you. Hey, you're just no good, fill in the blank. Somebody said that to you. You remember that stuff. And it shapes who you become afterward. Well, no one's ever going to blah, blah, blah with you. Did you know that you can do this? Blah, 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 blah. Those are exchanges that actually shape us. And they may not be these gigantic, memorable moments like they're going to make a movie out of someday, but they're constantly, persistently shaping who we are become. That's the power of words. The flip side of the coin is there may have been things that should have been said to you that never were. Hey, son, I'm proud of you. Some people never heard that in their whole life. Let me tell you something important before you run off and go do X, Y, and Z. Some of you can think back to a moment you ran off to do X, Y, and Z, and I wish somebody had given me a talking to before I just went out there and, eloped or, bought that car for 8 times more than my income or, whatever it was. How about stop or I'm calling the police? That's been a moment for some people. And you laugh, but there were moments, there are kids out there who could tell you, I wish somebody had spoken up and stood up and said, stop or I'm going to call the police, and nobody ever did anything. It just played out. Or how about, you don't have to prove anything to me, or what do you know about Jesus Christ? Like, who is he to you? There is immense power in words. I'm going to ask this question. What have been some of your canon conversations in life? Can you think of any? Spend a little time on it, not just now, but like later on this week. What have been some of your canon conversations? Ideas were given to you, or you were put in a position to ask yourself a question that was uncomfortable, but then you had to start dealing with it, and then as you dealt with it, or you got some advice, the lights started to come on and things changed for you. You might not realize just how much certain people's words have actually shaped who you have become today. It's worth thinking about. It might be too easy. Some of you have got like videotapes archived, Chances are, if you've got an archive, a videotape that you play back and forth every now and again, it was probably like a really bad one, right? It was a screaming match, it was somebody judged you and you've never forgotten it, kind of thing. But a lot of the shaping conversations, they really weren't these like big memorable moments, but it was just consistent, persistent, just again and again and again. Same stuff, same attitude, same ideas, same philosophies, shared and shared and shared. That's the power of words. Words are powerful whether they're used for good or for evil. Well, what's that got to do with fellowship? Well, if God is shaping you and changing you are by day, and He's shaping your heart to care about other people in your life, to care about your children more than you did before, to care about your neighbors, to care about how your community shapes up in 10 or 15 years, it's got a whole lot to do with fellowship. If you are a parent or a grandparent, or you're a guide to someone who has young people, or you're just a guide to young people directly, it's got a whole lot to do with fellowship. You've actually got a God-given call, believe this or not, to be intentional with your words. Just listen to what the Apostle Paul wrote. And if you read this ahead of time, like Miss Becky said, okay, she's absolutely correct. This should be enough to keep you busy for the rest of your life, right? This is it. This is the standard for believers that Paul began to bring in the grassroots movement of the church in those early days. He said, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up, according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen." Ephesians 4:29. You know, if you grew up in the church, like as a background back in the day, your perception of speech and being a believer and all that was, probably something like, don't say any bad words. Don't trigger any of the key words that are going to get your mouth washed out with soap. Maybe your mom didn't wash your mouth out with soap. Maybe she just made you bite the bar and hold it under your tongue or something. I've heard of that. I never had to do that. Of course, I was never threatened with that. And for whatever reason, I just, that wasn't me. I wasn't going to say any of the mean, nasty words when I was a kid. But that's not the benchmark, Paul says. When you become a believer, the bar goes much, much higher. According to Paul, when you become a believer, we're meant to grow a filter in our mouths. And the holes of the filter are only just big enough to let words through that help other people take a step closer to God than they were before. I'm getting a lot of blank stares right now. You're like, oh, I'm messing with some people, aren't I? Yeah, I'm messing with myself. This is hard stuff. This is hard stuff. Everything else that doesn't make it through that filter is supposed to just get swallowed and passed. I don't know another way to put it. It needs to, but whatever happens to it, it does not need to come out through the teeth. That's the benchmark. And you probably noticed, we don't just give those filters out when you come to church. Right? Nobody, we don't have those little mouth breathers that people are talking to, I can breathe underwater. Well, it also filters my speech as well. No, we don't have those. To date, there is no implant that you can get. I know Elon is working on it, but it's not out. And Paul is talking about something else. Paul is talking about being, hold on. Intentional. I know you've heard that word. I don't know if you know anything about it, though. No, that's kind of offensive. The thing is, I'm just going to call it like I know it. It's not normal to be intentional about anything anymore. Really, is it? I'm just saying, in America, maybe 100 years ago, it was just a little bit more normal to be intentional. It was just expected, to plan for 30 or 40 or 50 years into the future. What's my life going to be? What kind of a person am I going to be? Just kind of normal. I'm not saying that everybody did it was believers or Christians. I'm just saying it was more of a norm kind of a thing. But it's really not normal to be intentional today. It's not normal. Intentional parenting, is not normal. Intentionality in friendships is really not normal. Intentionality in your relationships with God, really still not normal. We're very, well, let me just wait and see till I know how I feel in the moment before I know what I'm going to do kind of people. Right? We're kind of afraid of getting ourselves into a place somewhere where we're not sure how we feel in that moment, if we like it in that moment. And I don't want to commit to that, right? We want to keep our options open. We want our emotions to be free in the moment to, just say or do or react however. And the thing is, intentionality really just means deciding what you're going to do ahead of time, before the emotion of the moment comes upon you. Intentionality means practicing reacting in the way that you know right now is going to be good, so that when you get into the emotion of that moment, and the car salesman's bearing down on you and offering you $8,000 worth of undercoating, you're like, no, I don't, I am afraid of rust, but not that afraid, right? You have to have a plan going in. Well, that's just a silly example. But when you are talking about high emotion kinds of relationships, relationships with your kids, relationships with your coworkers, the person in charge at work, how are you going to deal when some bozo out in the street decides to flip you off and then come and scratch your car up? Like, you have to have some intentionality ahead of time, so that you don't become someone you don't intend to be later. And that's how it works with speech. It really has to work that way with speech, because speech is easy, isn't it? You just throw out anything. I know this for a fact, I don't have to think in order to talk. I've practiced it. I can read a book without actually remembering any of the words. You know that skim speed read thing you do? Well, I can do the same thing with talking. It's impressive. Was any of that true? I don't know. But the words strung together like they went together, so I think pretty good. Intentionality means deciding ahead of time. Before they start talking smack and throwing shade, before you get that bad night of sleep, before you have that third drink that you probably shouldn't have, before your kids are all out of sorts and they start talking back to you, before your parents come down on you for whatever they're frustrated about in their personal lives. Intentionality means deciding that my job as a servant of Christ is to build their relationship with God, not to taint it, not to poison it. And it's easy to poison it without even trying. That means asking yourself, is it what they should hear, or is it what I want to say? Is it what they should hear, or is it just what I want to say? Some of you are like, well, there's no difference. Oh, you and I need to have a one-on-one, okay? There is a difference. There is a difference. I know it's easy to think, and in that moment especially of the motion and maybe you're frustrated or angry or you can't take anymore or you're just so excited to share. And, in that moment, just expressing whatever is inside there is very gratifying, right? Like, oh, I had an idea and I let it out and everybody heard it. Great. Everybody knows how angry I am. Everybody knows how wounded I am. Everybody knows. There's like a little reward. There's a dopamine or something in there that kicks on. Oh, yeah, that was really good. But it lasts like a moment. It lasts a moment. If you back up before that moment, there's a chance to ask yourself this question. What do I do? What do I say when such and such happens? I can't tell you every last thing that you should say in every situation. I've never even heard of some of your situations. But you can commit to asking this question going in. And you can bank, if you really want to know the answer, you can bank that the Holy Spirit will very much be present and you will absolutely know. You'll have a little pitter-patter. You'll have a little tingly sensation. I don't know how God convicts you or speaks to you in the moment, but I'm telling you, somehow or another, you'll actually have a great deal of confidence if you ask God whether or not you should say a thing or not. He's as faithful as it gets. And your conscience will tell you, actually, you could leave that on the table this time, friend. Just slow down. Am I going to complain about all the things I don't like today? Or am I going to celebrate good things I know God has done? Good things I've seen God do in people's lives. What am I going to fill the air with today? If I'm hurt or bothered about something, am I just going to hide it behind sarcasm and throw out little slicey little words, little arrows, little bitty barbs in them, and then just laugh at them? Am I going to let conversation linger around hearsay and drama? Or am I going to pull it back around toward what's true and wisdom and loving people where they're at? So you don't know where a conversation will end up. You cannot control what other people say. Even though some people try very, very hard. You can't. You can't control it. You won't know how you'll feel in a moment ahead of time. Somebody says something to you. You don't know how you're going to feel ahead of time. If anybody did, you could plan around it. You don't. But you can commit to this question. You can't answer it yet, but you can commit to this question. I know God will help you answer it. If you ask it in the moments you're not so sure, you'll have an answer. That's a strange thing for me to say. That's very mystical, Pastor James. It's very super ultra spiritual. I'm telling you, if you ask God this question, you will have an answer. You will know. If you're serious. Now here's the thing. Yeah, but Pastor James, I knew this was coming. Just so you know, I can have an entire conversation with you from here, and you don't even have to say anything. Say, I know what's in your head. Pastor James, I just like being able to say whatever comes across my mind as it comes. I don't want to feel like I have to think before I say things. It's kind of like I'm not being real or something. Let me ask you a question. You know that time that you just gave yourself permission to shut the filter down? Do you know what I'm talking about? Oh, you do. You do. That moment, you're like, you know what? I got all this welling up inside me, and man, I think I'm about to be the life of the party. Or man, I am so angry about what that guy is, I can't stand what my kids are doing right now. That moment, you were aware of it. I believe you were aware of it. There was a conscious decision to say, you know what? I could stop myself right now, but the switch is off. And isn't this my time? This is going to feel good. And you just you just barfed out everything that you felt. And every expression, you just barfed it out. You remember the hangover from that? Some of you are still nervous that other people remember the things that you said. Do you remember the backpedaling you had to try to do after You told your spouse exactly how you feel. Can you remember that time when you showed absolutely no gratitude toward that human being whatsoever? Imagine all the reconciliation work that you tried to do. Some of you are still recovering from it. You know? You saw the letdown in somebody's eyes. You had that tense follow-up conversation, or maybe it was when you saw the tears and the confusion in a young child's face. That ought to sting you. In that moment, you realized that can really do a lot of damage. A lot of damage. That's the truth. You know, and sometimes it wasn't, like I said before, just the big moment, you know, the big explosion. Sometimes it was just like, you know, doing or being around just like the persistent complaining. Or, you know, just the lack of gratitude that just goes on and on and on, and everything's terrible, and nobody, you know, the sarcastic remarks over and over and over and over again. It does stuff to a person. It does stuff to you to absorb it. It does stuff to the people you care about to subject them to it. Speaking without a filter feels very good, but just for a moment. I'm making an appeal here for Jesus, for all of us, to use the higher standard. There's absolutely no remorse or regret from intentionality. There's none. And people may not take you the way you thought they would take you, or they may not be in a place to receive, you know, whatever good thing you had, or the encouragement, or they may just act like they ignored it and walked off. But there is zero remorse to be had for looking a person in the eye and just saying, you know what would be good for them to hear today? What would be a good way for me to react to what they threw my way? Do I just, you know, pass the ball back to them just the way it was given, or do I, you know, set them up for a better shot? Set the bar higher. You know, don't set the bar just at a handful of keywords that get your mouth washed out with soap. I've seen more damage done by complaining and anger and nasty attitudes than I ever have by dirty words, foul language. You know, it's the ideas behind, it's the heart attitudes that are being transmitted over. You know, the stuff seeps into you over time, especially in kids. Especially in kids. I'm telling you, I'm appealing to you. If you're a parent, I know you're not all parents, but if you are a parent, I'm appealing to you. Your children are not just being built by the handful of words that you're protecting them from. They're being built by the attitudes that they're being exposed to all the time. You want selfless, generous kids, expose them constantly to gratitude. That's how it's done. You know, your kids may not say a bad word in their whole life, but if all they hear is, you know, the complaining and the, this isn't good enough for me and I deserve, like, man, your kids are not going to be selfless. I'm just warning you ahead of time. You want bold people with integrity. You know, protect them from anxiety-filled rants about what could happen if this happened and this happened. I mean, if that's what you want them to become, that's what's going to shape them. Don't expose them to fear of everything. You want your kids to be the kind of friends people would be proud to have. You better protect them from gossip. Don't let them just constantly be exposed to drama and talking about other people and their mistakes and, wow, they really would have been better off if they did this, and can you believe, like, oh my, you better protect them from that. I mean, yeah, don't let them watch TVMA and all that, but I'm saying this is where it's really happening every day. Celebrate the good you've seen in people. You know, fill the air with things that you believe will actually build those kids up. But lastly, and not leastly, this is for everybody, you've got to find a way to protect yourself. See, we've been talking about what you do, what comes out of you. That's very important. You've already, like Becky said, you got enough to work on for the rest of your life. Pastor James, you might not have to come back to church for about 6 or 8 weeks because I just filled your belly with goodness today, okay? But you and I both know, the world is kind of dramatic. And all we're surrounded by is complaining. Oh my, nothing but complaining. That's most of what media is. Most of what the internet is used for is complain. Well, not everything, but complaining. Complaining. This is terrible. No one's doing enough about it. This is bad. You deserve better. Blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just, and it permeates us. You're not bulletproof to it. It like seeps in over time. It affects who you become. You have to have a way to protect who you're becoming from all of the just sinful, rebellious, bad attitude, all the judgment out there. I mean, how easy is it for judgment to creep into your heart? There's already some there. You don't need to listen to a whole lot of other people just, these people they deserve to go, blah, 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 and these people are going to hell, and this is, like, you don't need that. Well, you can't avoid everybody. And there are only so many monasteries around for people to move into. You can't control what people say. Somebody's got to go out there and do the hard stuff. It's not always pretty. Usually isn't. Well, no. And God actually doesn't call you to go off and live in a monastery. I'm pretty sure He doesn't. Okay? Convent, whatever your choice is, right? Like, that's not the point. The point is not to remove yourself from society and never be seen again, and, that's not what we're going for. But you absolutely need an oasis somewhere in your life. An oasis of like-minded people who are on the same page about what you're trying to do here. For you, for your family. You can't protect yourself from everything out there, but you absolutely can put yourself in a place to go and get replenished, to get re-strengthened, to get reminded and encouraged, to fight the good fight, to stand your ground, to not be shaken, like the song said earlier. I won't be moved. I won't be shaken. I'm not coming off of this platform that Christ has put me on. I'm gonna keep moving toward this goal. You absolutely need an oasis somewhere in your life where you can get recharged by people who believe the same things that you do. They believe that people matter. They believe that just because a person doesn't believe doesn't mean that God doesn't have an eye for them and isn't pulling them back, and that we play a part in that by the way that we represent God and the things we say. You need to be surrounding yourself at some point in your life regularly with people who believe it's important what you say in a restaurant that gets overheard by other people, because you're representing the heart of Christ. It does. It matters. What if you had that? How much of a difference would that make? I think some of you would be relieved, absolutely relieved, if you knew there was a pocket of people someplace that were on the same page about what matters, and you could absolutely constantly go to them. And it's not just because, Pastor James is here, and I'm telling you, people, I'm going to stop talking in a second, but people absolutely have this. Sometimes people have stuff they're going through, and they don't want to deal with it, and they don't want to talk to anybody about it. But somehow it's a comfort to come and listen to the pastor talk. Because, he loves me, even if nobody else does. You know what? That's true. I do love you, even if nobody else does. But there's an awful lot that I can't help you through from up here. You need people who are going to be close to you. You need people who are going to go, maybe if you did it this way, maybe if you brought this up, maybe if you just backed up for a second, cooled your jets and cooled off, and then came back and said, hey, can we have a conversation tomorrow? You need people like that in your life. That's the importance of fellowship. If you want to know more about that, you don't have enough of that, you need more than you have currently, I want you to come talk to me. Because I have an idea about some things that you could get started in, and that's called access, and some of you are tired of hearing about it, but that's my MO, is that people would have access to a small community of people who are like-minded, have the same goals in mind, have the same values in mind, and are committed to each other getting exactly there. All right? That's enough for today. Next week, we're going to talk about something equally fun. I know, the hits are just going to keep on coming. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. I'm going to pray for you, and then I'm going to set you loose. It's going to be a short one today. Lord Jesus, you alone know the power of our words. You see them completely. You see the future. You see the longevity of the things that we say in other people's hearts, Lord. And you see how things have impacted us in the past, drama, trauma, bouts of depression. You've seen all of those things. You've heard our inside voices talking to ourselves. You know the impact. And we pray, Lord, for you to do what only you can do and reverse the trend, Lord. Cause us to be different. Set the bar higher inside of our hearts where things are decided upon. Use us as vessels, not poison. Make us different. In Jesus' name, amen. I'll be right back there after church today if anybody wants to talk to me.